Hi everyone, welcome to this talk on Lilith in the Sixth House. You can check out the other Lilith videos that I have on my playlist down below. I've also created Lilith worksheets, which simplify Lilith for you so you can really understand it at its core, how it works in your chart, and that way you're able to harness your sovereignty. All right, so let's dive into Lilith in the Sixth House. When we're looking at the sixth house, we're looking at the need to give service. And Lilith's consciousness is dealing with a rebelliousness and a feeling of being an outcast. In a past life, Lilith in sixth house hints to someone who may have done service and was abused for the service, wasn't given the right amount of money for the service that they were given. Maybe they had to do free service, like slavery, or something along the line. So with Lilith in the sixth house, one is presented with a job, and their relationship to job can have a very reactive energy. On the one side, someone may desire and know that they have to work in order to make ends meet, but also may not necessarily be in touch with their purpose at a job. It is when one actually aligns to their highest consciousness and just wants to serve, does their skills and what their purpose and how well they'll shine at a job really starts to emerge. In the lower levels of Lilith consciousness, this is what I call like the dark goddess level, the place where there's no rules. Lilith could not want to work at all, actually. Not necessarily go on vacation, but just not work. Maybe even be at work, but not work. Lilith is hardly working here as a rebelliousness towards her past life karmic situations. And the situation here that happens with the sovereignty is that we are in a reactionary mode. We're choosing sovereignty, but it's still coming from a reactionary mode. So Lilith is out of touch with any sort of calling and is choosing to live a life of off the grid, living a life off the grid, meaning off of a schedule, like no schedule, living a life of no structure. And this is the deepest energy of the moon, and the feminine energy is actually that there is no structure. So there's no structure in the ability to work. And while this may seem very bizarre to many of us who live in cultures where we have to work, it's actually very revolutionary for Lilith when she is out of her reactionary mode and understanding that her ability to choose not to work can be something that helps people to see where it is that they're suffering in work and jobs that they aren't really committed to and they don't really have a purpose. So this could be someone who ultimately chooses to not work and consciously creates a level of searching for what their true service is in life. This could be somebody who chooses finally to work, but only on the things that they feel the most connected to, being an example. Because the sixth house isn't quite leadership, but it's like it has more of that mercurial energy, right? And Mercury can bring out envy. So what ends up happening here is that when one is conscious of those shadows, they become an example to people. And people may be a little bit envious, and that might be their gateway into understanding the person who harbors the Lilith in the sixth house. Because once they can break through that part of themselves, they'll see that the person in the sixth house is deeply searching for a real desire to serve. It's one thing to be obligated to serve and to do it in that way. That creates the structure because then you're like, okay, I'm obligated to serve. I have to be there on time. I have to do this amount of work. I have to meet certain deadlines. And it is kind of mechanical. You could have someone who has the same exact circumstance. They have to meet deadlines, they have to be to work on time, but they're driven by this great connection to all and what their calling is. And so much can change in the sixth house with Lilith here, or nothing can change at all, but just the frequency of what is happening. It's really up to you and how you want to play this out. And it's all about recognizing how when we do trade, right, in the house of service, it can really help you to lose your soul. It could help you to literally lose what it is that you're reaping in this life. Sometimes exchange is important, like in the house of income. But in the house of work, exchange is mutual. And quite often in a world where you have to do that 9 to 5, or you have to get a job after you leave high school or after you leave college, one can start looking for work out of obligation versus being pulled towards their truest work. And Lilith in the sixth house is really searching for that. If you have this placement, I highly advise for you to experience why it is that you really want to work, and really take a look at the moments where you don't, and what actions do you take? Do you continue to push yourself, force yourself, or do you start to dig a little bit deeper? I mean, you might still have to force yourself to go to work tonight, you know what I'm saying? But do you just allow yourself the cynicism of that's it, that's all that there is, I'll never have that dream career? Or do you allow yourself to go to work tonight and start to kind of hold yourself accountable for why it is that you aren't in your calling? The sixth house is about your accountability as well. And this is how people who are excelling in their work environments are usually based off of some sort of accountability that they're making that is far beyond the rest in their work field. But to understand accountability on a performance level, like when you are accountable because you have to be, versus accountability on a heartfelt level, where you're accountable because you want to be, because you understand the importance of your small self in the midst of all that there is and all the people are there. That when you hold yourself accountable and it's really coming from you, that you can make incredible waves in your life. You can be an incredible being of what true sovereignty is in a life where most people have to move by the rules of what kind of job they're in. Some of you may find that you stay in the same exact jobs, but the calling itself is what changes, right? It could be the same company, but your commitment to making it better could shift incredibly when you understand your accountability and finding your calling. And then some of you might actually choose completely different jobs when you realize that you've been trapped in a survival mode of what you think you're supposed to do versus ever really making the moves towards doing what you want. So your sixth house is such an important house, and what I think is one of the most underestimated houses there. And when Lilith is here, we really see why that is. A possibility to reject or be rejected in the field of work could actually be one of the best things that happen to you. And I think that Lilith actually gets to experience rejection in a way that truly frees her. Some of you might be in jobs where you are clearly the best worker, but people don't see it, And some of you might be in jobs where you're an excellent worker, but you're not really, really loving it. You're not really engaged with it. So when you find that happy medium where everything about what you do and get up in the morning and have to do really flows for you because you're in the flow state of your own desires, of your own rhythm, then you will see that these situations change. You'll see that situations where people are undermining you change, where people are making you their like little secretary, those things start to change. They start to ask you for your advice versus making you run and get them